So I asked Chat GPT if it could teach me how to play the controller role in Valorant. And I wanted to see if its answers are better than what I could come up with. I main Omen and I have climbed the ranks in Valorant as a controller player. So is Chat GPT a better controller teacher than I am? Let's find out. With that being said, let's get right into it. In order to get the best results out of ChatGPT, I did some digging and found out exactly how to write a proper prompt to make sure I get a good answer. The prompt that I ended up using was, you are going to act as a professional Valorant esports coach. You've helped people rank up from bronze to radiant and master the controller agent smoke role since Valorant came out in 2020. From new players to pro players. Your task now is to give the best advice when it comes to improving your skills in Valorant as a smoke agent. You must always ask questions before you answer so you can better zone in on what the questionnaire is seeking. Is that understood? So now that the prompt has been made, we can start asking it questions. My first question was, could you please explain to me exactly what my role is as a controller agent and how I can get the most out of my agent abilities, what the best agent would be to start with, and what my role on the team would be. I also let it know that I'm a new player and I don't know that much. Now this was a very broad question, but ChatGPT came up with some pretty good answers. It let me know that I'm a support player and my role is to use my abilities to create openings for my teammates on attack and defense, which is pretty spot on if I do say so myself. The only thing I would add is that you should probably try and stay alive because your utility is very useful in the late rounds. In terms of how to get the most out of my abilities, it also has some good tips. It said to use my abilities to block off common angles, try and use my abilities in combination with my team's abilities, and be mindful of the enemy's abilities and try to use my abilities to counter them. There's not much else that could be said here, other than you could use your smokes and your other abilities to condition the enemy team into thinking you're going to do certain things and then throwing them off guard by doing something else. However, this is a more advanced tip that you would learn over time as you begin to play the controller role more. It recommended that I start out by using Brimstone as he is very powerful and easy to use. However, I would also say you could dabble with Omen because he's very user friendly as well. It explained that Brimstone's incendiary creates a wall of fire and that his sky smokes smoke areas from above. And it also forgot his best ability, which is Brimmy Stimmy. It was close with this one, but not quite, and that's okay because when you log into Valorant, you can check out each agent and what their abilities do. So all in all, ChatGPT is off to a good start, minus a couple hiccups. But of course, this isn't nearly enough information to actually learn how to play the controller role, so I had to dig a bit deeper. I then asked it if I should be playing aggressively or passively. It told me that I should be playing aggressively on attack and passively on defense, but the most important thing is that I learn how to be flexible and adapt to the situations around me, which is correct because it is how you play Valorant in general. However, if you're playing the controller role, I would highly suggest that you opt for a more passive playstyle as your utility is extremely important and you don't want to just run onto site and die right away. I then tried to dig a little bit deeper and asked if it had any other tips on how to use my smokes other than blocking entry points. It gave me the same answer, just worded differently about 6 different times. However, it did come up with 2 very unique tips. Number 1, it called peeling. This is where you use your abilities to help get your teammates out of a sticky situation or protect them. This is something that is overlooked by a lot of controller players, and it should be utilized when necessary. For example, if your teammate is stuck on site and they want to regroup with you back in main, you should smoke them off so that they can get out. And it also talked about flanking, how you can use your smokes to fake a site and flank around and get behind the enemy team. This is also a very useful tactic. You can also use it for yourself if you're in a 1v1 or a 1v2, throw a smoke and flank to a different site. So these are very good and effective tips that you should be utilizing if you want to play the controller role. I then wanted to know who it thought the most viable agent to play would be, and it told me I should play either Brimstone or Omen as they have the highest pick rate, which is a classic AI generated response. But in my opinion, I would also agree with that, especially when you're starting out, as they are both very useful and very powerful agents. You don't really need to learn anything extra or unique to play them properly or play them well. However, with that being said, they both have a very high skill cap, which means that if you play them enough, you can get extremely good with them. Keep in mind, they both have completely different playstyles. Where Omen is a more aggressive and lurky controller agent, Brimstone is very passive and needs to be playing around his team to get the most out of his kit. I then asked it for even more advanced tips to see if it could actually turn me into a controller god, and it definitely delivered with this one. It mentioned utility usage, utility management, map knowledge, crosshair placement, free firing, communication, adaptability, and mindset, all of which are amazing tips and are probably the only ones you'd actually need to master the controller role. And last but not least, I wanted to see if it knew the biggest weaknesses of the controller role in Valorant. And I gotta say, it was pretty spot on with this one. It mentioned their reliance on utility and how quickly they can run out of it, also how expensive their utility is. It also talked about how you need to be careful with using your utility and saving it for when it's most important, instead of just blindly throwing it out at the beginning of the round. It also mentioned their lack of mobility, which is very true unless you're playing Omen, but even then his mobility probably won't save your life. It mentioned that flanks and rushes are their biggest weakness, which is extremely important to note because depending on which controller agent you're playing, if you get rushed or flanked, you're basically dead. It also talked about how controller players need to work closely with their team and always be communicating what's going on, knowing their surroundings 24/7, which is something a lot of people don't do, which is why they might not want to play the controller role. And lastly, it goes into more detail about their vulnerability against aggressive playstyles and how difficult it can be for a controller player if the enemy team gets map control. All of which are straight facts, but at the end of the day, that's just Valorant in general, because it usually doesn't matter what agent you're playing, most of those will apply to you. Keep in mind that playing the controller role in Valorant isn't very rewarding, and it is the hardest in terms of actually playing the game. Whereas duelists and initiators can just push W and use their utility, and sentinels can play back on site and play off of their utility, a controller player has to always be thinking about where their teammates are, what they're doing, when to smoke, where to smoke, and has to stay alive while also providing backup and support for his team. And most of the time you're going to get stuck in clutch situations if you are playing your role properly, making it by far the most complicated and important role in the game. Keep in mind that there are a lot of things that go into it, and it's not as easy as people think. However, if you do master playing smokes, you can basically play any other role in the game. And at the very end, I asked Chat GPT to summarize everything that it taught me, and this is the end result. Step 1 was to choose a suitable controller agent. Step 2 was to learn the role, which is to disrupt enemies' vision and control the map. Step 3 is to practice your aim. Step 4 is to use your utility effectively. Step 5 is to conserve your utility. Step 6 is to know the map. Step 7 is to learn when to pre-fire. Step 8 is communication. Step 9 was adaptability. And step 10 was positive mindset. I'm not gonna lie to you, Chat GPT basically hit it on the head with this one. If you follow all 10 steps that I gave you, you can basically master the controller role in general. However, it is still only the basics of playing the role. Anything else you would need to learn can come from time played and experience. The only other things I could add on to this would be agent specific, which isn't really fair because I didn't ask it to specify for each agent, and I can maybe take it a step further by giving you in-game examples on how to use your smokes more effectively and other things like that. However, like I said, if you take these basic tips and apply them into your game and play consistently, you will very quickly master smokes in Valorant. So at the end of the day, AI may be taking over, but until it can actually show you gameplay and break down certain things in more detail, there will still be a need for content creators, as you will always learn more from someone who has actual experience in the game rather than from an AI, at least for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you struggle with your aim and can't find a good routine to use, go check out my in-game aim routine. It'll be recommended at the end of this video. Much love guys, hopefully I'll see you in the next one.